All right, we should be live. So hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy. I'm here with my co-host, Matty B. And back once again is the baseball guru, Rick David. Now, this week we only have 3 topics, so we're going to kind of go through them. First one, brand new. NFL was coming close. It's very close. My daughter woke me up by putting on our Michigan helmet that we have here at the house, puts it on and rams me in bed, jumps right in. That's how excited she is. She's only 1 and she knows football season's almost here. So the excitement's real. Training camp started last week. Already James Conner's hurt. So the Steelers are looking pretty thin right now at running back if Bell does not come back. I don't know how serious his injury is. They took him away for tests, but I haven't heard anything. Have you guys?
No.
Nah, so
not right now. I haven't, and that's disappointing because I was really hoping Connor was going to take a lot of reps and really end up pushing Le'Veon Bell to sign his contract. That was something looking into this earlier in the week that I was kind of aggravated that they franchised him. He knew that he was going to have that tenure, and he still hasn't signed yet. I understand from his side that he can miss out on part of camp, keep himself healthy for the regular season. But nonetheless, I think you're a professional. You should act that way. Sign the contract, get to camp, get yourself used to playing with your teammates. And, where I think in baseball that we discussed last week or 2 weeks ago, you can kind of get away with being away from the team. With football being more of a team sport, you need that cohesion. I think he misses out by holding out from training camp.
Yeah, Rick, do you have any thoughts on him?
I agree with them. This was the time, especially if James Conner was stayed healthy, he would have probably got most of the starts and most of the reps in the first, 2 games of the preseason just because Bell's not there. So it's a tough injury for them to take at first, especially now. You're probably maybe looking at the first exhibition game. You're going to go with your third string runner for a good chunk of the game now because of injuries.
And that runner's Fitz Toussaint. He's a small guy. I saw him play at Michigan quite a few times. I don't think he has the burst to play at an NFL level. He's pretty reliable, though, and I don't remember him really ever getting hurt. So he might be a decent just filler option until Bell comes back. If Bell doesn't come back or he comes back and gets hurt, because he's known to miss games too, I don't know what type of a long solution that's going to provide for the Steelers. But we're going to keep going with football. I'm going to hop right into it because I'm sure we're going to go pretty long talking football this week. Going to switch views, and we're going to look at the fantasy football cheat sheet I threw together. Now, it's pretty crazy, and it might be tough to see, but I'm going to tweet this out and send it out after. I'm going to go ahead and explain it here. There are about 3 different sections, basically. On the left, in the middle, you have the 2017. It's the ESPN cheat sheet. We do an auction-style draft. If you're looking to do, if you're in a league and you guys just do the actual pick'em draft, whatever it's called, the snake draft, the overall draft values for those players are in parentheses on the left. So if you're doing a snake auction or a snake draft instead of an auction, they are predicting, or they want you to take Aaron Rodgers as the first quarterback with the 37th pick, depending on how many people are in your league. Let's say it's a 10-team league. That's a 3rd-round pick for the first quarterback. Now, I put together, and before I get into this, you are going to want to go ahead and take a look at your league settings. I can't stress that enough. Your league, every league is different. So I'm trying to pull in stats from our league. We use ESPN. We have for years. So I have ESPN stats. That's on the top right there. 2016, I have the highest scorers. That's for our league. We play PPR, which it means point per reception. So that might boost up some of the receivers and some of the running backs who catch a lot of balls. If you're looking at the number 1 for our league last year, David Johnson. Now, the bottom section of this is the top quarterbacks for the past 3 years, top 10 each year, and that data is coming from fantasydata.com. Again, they have fraction points. We don't use fraction points in our league. Your league might not. This is just for reference, just to kind of show how many points quarterbacks normally score compared to past seasons and what ESPN is recommending here. So before, I'll let these guys talk, but just first thing, ESPN wants you to wait until the third round to get a quarterback. If you look at our highest scores from last year, 4 of the top scorers in our league were all quarterbacks. You have Aaron Rodgers, he's number 2 overall. Matt Ryan, who ESPN I don't even think had in the top 10 last year, because I had the cheat. I drafted him for $2 last year. He was 3rd overall scoring. Then we had Drew Brees, who's always pretty solid, and then Andrew Luck, who missed a couple games, so he could potentially have been higher on the list. So I would say, depending on your league scoring, go through, if you played last year, even if you didn't play last year, look up whatever your league scoring rules are. Go to a site like fantasydata.com where you can look at historical ratings, plug in your settings, and see what these position ranks are. Because ESPN's telling you right now to spend $22 on Aaron Rodgers, but don't draft him until the 37th pick. When you can get a head start over anyone, you want a top 10 scorer, you can pick up Aaron Rodgers maybe by bidding a little bit more. If other people in your league are looking at that cheat sheet and they're thinking, I'm not going to go over $22 for Aaron Rodgers, he would be a steal at $30 compared to paying $70 for, let's say, like a Mike Evans, a $60 for Mike Evans. You can get a steal on a quarterback, especially in our league. I just wanted to put that out there. I've been going through some stats, getting ready for the draft. So, Matt, you're the football guy. I'll let you kick it off. What are your thoughts on drafting a quarterback high in the first round or bidding high for one?
I really don't. I mean, depending on the league, I think is a big part of that. But I think in a lot of fantasy football formats, running backs and wide receivers really are where you're going to make a lot of your money. So if you're okay with taking a mid-tier quarterback, one of the ones that stands out to me over the last couple of years was like an Andy Dalton. He doesn't do a lot to hurt you, but he'll add a couple touchdowns, at least 1 or 2 touchdown passes a game, and he'll at least keep you in the hunt. I think what ends up hurting a lot of fantasy players is when you don't have good quality, consistent wide receiver play from week to week. If one week your receiver goes off and has 32 points, but then the next week doesn't even get a ball thrown his way, it doesn't really help factor in what kind of ratings you're going to have. To me, I've always looked at quarterback as one of the positions that if you don't need to have the Aaron Rodgers type quarterback to help your team. On the flip side of that, though, I think if you're in a league and you start to see, quarterbacks are going on a run, Aaron Rodgers goes and then Matt Ryan goes and Drew Brees goes, you may want to reach for an Andrew Luck or another tier quarterback just so that you don't end up with a question mark quarterback like whoever the flavor of the week is for the Jets, or a possible turnover machine like Jameis Winston was last year. So I think you take those things into consideration of, in the ideal situation, like with our league where you're auctioning players, you may want a Tom Brady type player, but if he's being auctioned off at $30, $50, do you really want to spend a quarter of your budget for one player? For some people, they may want to build around that and just say, well, I want my quarterback and I can use the free agency to pick up the rest of the skill players as the season progresses, but consistently want that quarterback to start the season off.
Rick, what are your thoughts?
I'm just to keep thinking about Aaron Rodgers. I mean, one thing that helped him was their defense was not keeping them in games. They were constantly playing close games. And also the other thing was they didn't have a good running back situation until the end of the season when Montgomery was a solid running back. So I think what helped him out was he was throwing because they needed to win and they couldn't rely on the running game. And then I look, Rodgers, Brady, Brees, 3 very older quarterbacks in this league. So are you going to take an older quarterback, spend a good amount of your money on an older quarterback? But I think kind of going along the lines of what Matt was saying, I mean, Ryan's a $7, Luck's a $6, Derek Carr's a $2, and Cam Newton's a $2. I mean, those are guys that I would look more at. We'd save some money and try to get somebody and know that these teams are good teams and they're going to be winning, and especially with teams like the Raiders, who have a very good defense. You know that, Derek Carr's going to, have good games and everything. And they're not going to constantly have to shoot from behind where defenses will blitz nonstop on him. And they also have a good running game to balance it out. So, and the thing that helps out Cam Newton is he could still run. Even though Ron Rivera doesn't want him to run as much, Cam Newton's still going to run. So, I would stay away from those, higher tier players of the quarterbacks just because of their age and stuff, maybe they're not in the best situations because Saints weren't the best team last year, and Green Bay's defense was very spotty last year too.
Yeah, I agree with the age thing. In an auction draft, when you're looking at players, you have some for $2. Any quarterback you can get for $2 is going to be a steal. I can tell you right now, looking at this list, probably no one in the top 10 in our league will go for under $5 to $10. I got lucky with Matt Ryan last year because I sat and I tried to bid up. I know Cam Newton, he got bid up over 20 something dollars. I hit on him. I tried to get some other ones, but looking at the previous list here, you go back the past 3 years, there's a pretty decent drop off after it's the fifth or sixth quarterback. So if you can land one of those guys, either 5, 6, you could probably get them for semi-cheap, maybe $10, $12. You can get them somewhere around the 5th or 6th round, unless, like Matt said, the quarterbacks are just flying off the board. But if you can somehow pick, and you're going to have to get lucky. That's why I'm comparing 3 years here. So if you're looking at all 3 years, and some of the quarterbacks are too young to be on all 3 lists, but Aaron Rodgers, he's on the top 10 for all 3 years. So if you bid up, you have a good chance of having a top 10 quarterback. Another one, Russell Wilson. Now, he's been swinging down. He was 3rd in 2014, 3rd in 2015. He dropped the 10th last year. If he can rebound, which I don't know if he can, that could give you a budget player. He's 6th overall on the ESPN board. They have him for $3. He'll probably go for somewhere around 12 in our league. We play with 14 people. I don't know. Like I said, you're going to have to kind of know your league. Hopefully you've paid attention in past years so you can kind of pick up on tendencies. So you'll kind of know whenever you're adjusting your own board. Don't just go by what their cheat sheet says. You have to kind of make your own adjustments, what you're willing to pay. Cam Newton could be a steal. I don't know if he has any weapons, though. The other one that I was looking at was Kirk Cousins. He's been climbing, but I don't know about him. Again, with the weapons and just they're playing in a brutal division. Another quarterback in that division, Eli Manning. Now, he was in the top 10. He was 10th. You might be able to get him for very cheap. And he just added Brandon Marshall. I believe Marshall's on there. Odell Beckham's on there. You know those guys are going to get a lot of catches. They're going to have a lot of touchdowns. So if you can get him, he could be a wild card. The other wild card that's off the list, Ben Roethlisberger, his problem is staying healthy. He's another one of those old ones. But you might be able to get him for cheap, and when he plays, he could put you over the top. I know last year he was putting up some games where he was getting 30 points in our league himself, willing teams to win, but he just didn't play that often. So, go ahead, Matt.
There's one other thing that I was looking at with the quarterbacks. I think one thing that can really help a team is if you're able to match a team's wide receiver with the quarterback. So like with Aaron Rodgers, if you're able to have Jordy Nelson on your team, you can spend a little bit more to have Aaron Rodgers to go with him and kind of get double the money for the player. So you get the touchdown, for every touchdown that he throws, you're getting double the points. Sometimes that can be something to help. Looking at last year, had I've bid the extra money for Matt Ryan having Julio Jones on my roster, it may have been something to help push my point totals a bit higher in the playoffs.
Well, that's another thing, as you mentioned, for the playoffs. If you're going to do that, make sure you check the schedule for that team, whatever guys you pick. If you pick the Falcons, make sure you check. And again, I can't tell you check week 14, 15, 16 or whatever. You have to make sure, check your league schedule, see when playoffs are, and make sure they're not playing a juggernaut. You don't want to be stuck against the Patriots defense, which they give up points, but they could also shut your team down. If it's looking like you have a 3-week stretch of maybe like the Browns or someone and a bunch of other garbage teams, then yeah, go for that. But definitely check the schedule, because if they end up getting shut down on offense that week in the playoffs, that could be the thing where all year you're smooth sailing, double the points, double the points, double the points. You hit one of those snags, because that's where the top teams really get matched up around fantasy football playoffs, because that's when the NFL likes to do that. It's usually around Thanksgiving, the week after in December. They try to put on those high-profile matchups. College football is not on anymore, so they move some of them to Saturday to try to attract more eyeballs. So they usually put a lot of marquee games in those couple weeks. So you definitely don't want to get stuck with two teams or two players from the same team that's in a juggernaut matchup that could end up a 10-7 game, and you're sitting there banging your head off the wall. So check the schedule. That is a good point. I have doubled up before. It doesn't even have to be quarterback receiver. It could be quarterback tight end. That's another one if you have. I know we had someone in our league that doubled up on Gronkowski and Tom Brady, which when they were playing until Gronkowski got hurt, that's an automatic 30 points, 40 points a week. And that makes it tough, and you can pick up random other guys to fill in your need, because you know you got those consistent players. You can take more chances and more risks. Rick, go ahead, since you don't have a chance to talk. You have any thoughts on?
And I think the other thing to think about is, as well, it's gonna be a little bit different this year, especially for Tom Brady. He could have a 16-game season, because where last year he only had the 12 because of the suspension. And Kirk Cousins, the one thing that I look at as a wild card is, what will Terrell Pryor bring to a winning team? You know, before he was with the Browns and they were consistent losers, is he going to bring something of winning? Is he going to help separate themselves and be that missing piece for Washington to help them get a couple wins? I don't know if he will be. They have too many missing parts, and they're in probably one of the toughest divisions in football, and I know we're going to talk more about that, but it's tough to, some of those teams in that division have really good defenses. So I think it's going to be tough on Kirk Cousins again, even with the help of Terrell Pryor too.
Yeah, sticking with that division, the one guy I see on the list right below Kirk Cousins is Dak Prescott. Without how run-heavy the Cowboys' offense has been with Ezekiel Elliott, that's someone where if they get a lead, and they might have the lead a lot this year, is he going to get a lot of opportunities to throw the ball? I don't know if I would honestly have him in the top 10, just because their offense is so unknown.
But I think, looking at a couple of these quarterbacks, the Cam Newton, the Dak Prescott, I'll even throw Derek Carr in there and Russell Wilson. Those guys also account for a good bit of rushing offense as well. So if you're willing to take, a risk on a player, maybe they're not going to throw for as many touchdowns, but if they can factor in some rushing touchdowns and some rushing yards along the way, that can be something to kind of pad the stat book. Last year I was surprised at how many yards Tyrod Taylor was able to consistently put up with being Buffalo's quarterback. He wasn't throwing a lot of touchdowns, but he did a lot with his feet that allowed him to gain a lot of points, week to week, make him a viable quarterback in some leagues.
Yeah, that's a good point about the rushing quarterbacks. It's going to be a gamble, because running quarterbacks also get hit more. And so you definitely want to kind of stick with the younger guys. That might be a mark on Cam Newton. I mentioned his weapons weren't there last year, and he wasn't on the top 10. ESPN has him in the top 10. They have him at 7. I still think that would be a risk. I don't know. I don't even know who I'm leaning towards on this list. Matt Ryan, yeah, I could have kept him for $2, but then again, I'm looking at David Johnson, who's also on my team. And if you look at the points for the highest scores I have on my list here for 2016, if you do the the wins above replacement or whatever, like the MLB stat, he's given me 5 extra points more than anyone. Even Aaron Rodgers, he's getting me 5 extra fantasy points a week on my team. So there's no argument for me not to keep him and then try to keep Matt Ryan for $2, because the way I feel, someone's going to bid him up well over the $70 I have him for. And then I'm stuck with Matt Ryan, which, I mean, if I could land Matt Ryan again for $7 like ESPN says, I'd definitely do it. but I think he's going to go a lot higher in our league. I could see Drew Brees not going as high just because of his age. The Saints are an unknown. I don't know how the NFC South, they have to go up against the Buccaneers. And who else? The Panthers are always kind of decent. They have Cam Newton. I mean, it's not going to be an easy division. He doesn't have a cakewalk. And he has Matt Ryan. So maybe there will be some shootouts. I don't know for Drew Brees to get some points, but at a certain age, he's not a tall guy. He's not a big guy. So he's more of like a smaller, one wrong hit could take him out. I just don't feel, I definitely wouldn't pay the third highest salary to pick up Drew Brees. I know he was third last year in points, but 2014 and 2015, he was sixth both years. That's more, I think, of what his average would be, 6 or 7 around the league, I would think, this year. What do you guys think about Matthew Stafford? He came out and said some things last week where he was saying that the NFC North is their goal. Anything else would pretty much be a failure at this point.
I like the confidence that he's willing to come out and say that, and maybe he's been working and having some chemistry with the players that he feels confident in what they're able to do. I don't know that happens. I think until they can show that they can put up the points to compete with Green Bay, I think it's going to be Green Bay's to lose. The team that I really am high on this year out of that is going to be Minnesota. A little bit of bias with the Dalvin Cook draft, but I think they have a pretty good defense. They have some weapons on offense, and I think that Minnesota could be the real challenge for the rights to the division. I would think that Detroit would really have a tough go trying to win the division, but I guess that's why you play the games.
And I think it would be tough for Detroit because they're a team that's kind of a mixture. They have good years, they have bad years. I would say if you're ranking them right now, Chicago's probably not going to be there in the playoff hunt, but they got, Minnesota will be in the playoff hunt. So will Green Bay at the end of the year. So, and I mean, they haven't been consistent and they haven't really proved a lot with Matthew Stafford. So I think he has to put the pressure on himself to go out there and prove that he's one of these elite quarterbacks, because obviously ESPN doesn't think he's in the top 10 of fantasy quarterbacks. So he might, I would even, if I was ranking top 10 quarterbacks, he wouldn't be in that top 10. So he would probably be barely skimming by in the top 15 even at this point.
Well, if you go through, let's say, so our league has, we had 14 players last year. I definitely think Matt Stafford would fit as one of those starters. He was 7th overall. If you can kind of pick him up at the end, where the way our league works, if you wait, and I'm sure any other auction draft or even a snake draft, once everyone gets their top pick, no one else is picking quarterbacks for a while. So if you want to take the strategy of trying to fill up by stacking up on a couple mid to high end wide receivers or running backs and waiting on a quarterback, Stafford might be that guy. He could shoot up into the top 10. He was in it in 2015 and 2016. And you might be able to get him in a later round just because of some of the hype on some of these younger guys. Dak Prescott, I mean, even Derek Carr. Stafford, he's a veteran quarterback you could probably get for cheap. That's why I brought him up. I was looking through to see who was missing on ESPN's top 10 list. And just some other quarterbacks that, I don't know, as I'm going around, I mean, I know some people took Jake Locker high last year. I'm not seeing it with him. I don't even know if he's a starter anymore. So a couple other teams around the league have question marks. I went through and asked, as we did our picks for the AFC-NFC, just some of the Southbound Sports guys, what we thought about the quarterbacks. We had a couple Matt Ryans. He was definitely going to be a sleeper. He's not really a sleeper this year. Last year he would have been a sleeper. This year everyone's high on him as being a potential number 1 or number 2 pick if you can't get Aaron Rodgers. We had some Aaron Rodgers. We did have one guy say Deshaun Kaiser for the Browns, which I took as a joke because actually I know where he's seen. He watches too much ESPN if that's his pick, because ESPN was hyping. I saw that they said it had an article, one of the receivers for the Browns who's been everywhere and played for a bunch of garbage quarterbacks.
Kenny Stills.
Yeah, Kenny Stills. He said that Kaiser was going to be a great one. And I don't know what qualifier he's using for that, but there's a good chance Kaiser doesn't even start this year for the Browns. So I wouldn't be drafting him high. If you want a sleeper, potentially, if your quarterback gets hurt, maybe that's something we look at for free agency. You might be able to pick him up later. The other one would be, is Flacco out? And did the Ravens actually pick up Kaepernick? Last I heard, their owner said they were preying on it or something crazy. So I don't know. Is Flacco out for sure? Because this is big in the Steeler country. We need to know who's going to be the quarterback. But if Kaepernick's the quarterback, 100% confident in the Steelers. Kaepernick can't get it done. Nothing to do with his antics. He's just not a good football quarterback. I watched him play for the 49ers for 3 years. He's not accurate. You can't be an NFL quarterback and be accurate or not be accurate. You have to at least be able to hit a throw. And I look back at it. Everyone knocks Harbaugh for losing that Super Bowl. A lot of the rivals do. But he had Kaepernick down in the goal line for 3 or 4 straight plays, and Kaepernick couldn't make a play. Definitely had him roll out. He could either throw or run. Everyone knew he was a running quarterback. He couldn't get it done. And I compare it to the Santonio Holmes, Ben Roethlisberger against the Cardinals throw. Same situation. Coach puts him in a chance to win. Who's going to make that play? And that's where I'll say Ben Roethlisberger, if he's healthy playing against Kaepernick, I'll take Roethlisberger every day. So I'm not afraid of the Falcons or the Ravens from the Steelers' perspective. If he's playing, I think that pretty much locks up the division. I just don't think the Bengals have any self-discipline. Until they get some of that fixed, they'll have no chance in the AFC North, which we'll bring in, I think, next week anyway. But what do you guys think of the Ravens quarterback? If Flacco's out, who else do you go at this point?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that it's a back issue that Flacco has, and I do think that it's a matter of how severe the injury is. It could be something that's going to linger throughout the year. But I think it's a heads-up move on their part to sign Kaepernick just as an insurance policy. I don't think they have yet. But for as much talk as there is, there has to be some kind of contract work being done to see if they can make both ends come to some kind of agreement. It's a natural fit because they're not going to – Coach Harbaugh is not going to make Kaepernick be the center point. He's not going to be a quarterback that's going to have to throw 30, 40 times a game. They're more than likely he'll be a game manager, which is something that he was able to do and be successful in San Francisco with. They're run first, let your defense handle it type of team. So if there was an ideal situation for him to come in, it would be under something like that where Baltimore is known historically to take lower level quarterbacks and be able to produce with them.
And it looks like right now that Colin Kaepernick has not been signed yet, so by the Ravens. And it looks like Flacco's having a disc problem, and it's just going to be lingering pain, so they're having him out for a week, which is spelling bad news for the Ravens already. So, especially if one of their top guns is out.
If that's a disc, I mean, that's going to be painful throwing all year. I think most of those usually end in surgery. Either he plays with it and they give him shots, or he just gets the surgery over with now. And I don't know what. I didn't have the Ravens high in my predictions. I don't know if people are predicting them to actually make a run in the Super Bowl, but it might just be a move where he just takes a sit for the year, but I don't know. I'm looking, I don't even know who else they would get. Looking at quarterbacks and stuff. I mean, throw in Kaepernick. I know Jim Harbaugh put in a good word, I heard. But, I mean, Kaepernick always liked him. But the way Kaepernick played under Chip Kelly, that's the offense that's tiered towards him. If he can't be successful in Chip Kelly's offense, is he going to be successful in another offense? I don't know. It's kind of like trying to hammer a square peg through a round hole. I just don't know. So, I don't even know if they'll sign him. I mean, I guess they would just for the controversy. You know what they say, any publicity is good publicity, which they would definitely get it if they sign him. I know they said that the owner brought in Ray Lewis to see what he thought, which, bring in the murderer to see about team chemistry.
Yeah, and here are some of your free agents that are left. It's Colin Kaepernick, Jay Cutler, Robert Griffin III, Bruce Gradkowski, if he didn't retire yet with the Steelers. They say he's still out there. Christian Ponder. There's not much out there. This is looking like some older guys and guys that had a chance and didn't make it, so it's
all those guys are wild cards. That's why I was looking at the same list. I don't know, I didn't say him, but like Kettler, he's not going to be the ball control guy. He'll be the guy that just throws one up randomly for an interception, and he's more of like a gunslinger that you might throw out in more of a spread type offense, where the Ravens are more ball control with Flacco. Like Matt said, they can plug in anyone, even going back to their other Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer. They've been that way for a decade. Like, you're not just going to plug in an RG3 who runs a spread and be successful, I don't think. I mean, nothing against Coach Harbaugh. He's a great coach. I'm sure he would adapt, but at this point in the game, when preseason games are about to start, you don't have much time.
I think a lot of it hinges also on the coordinators, because when you look at it, like even take the Steelers, for example, when Roethlisberger gets hurt, there's a significant turn in the way the offense is run when it goes from Ben to Landry Jones. And, is it the fact that Landry Jones sucks as a quarterback? Possibly. But how much of that falls on Todd Haley to build around what Jones can do right? To try to run the same offense and the same scheme that Ben can make plays and adjust on the fly, and trying to use that same round peg in a square hole analogy. It's reason maybe they're not able to produce as many points and have to really rely on the defense when there's injuries to either Ben or Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, I wonder how much it has to be with them just throwing out sets for Ben. Like, here's a package. This is going to work against what the defense is showing us. And then Ben picks from 2 or 3 plays. Because a lot of systems, he's been in there long enough where he can go ahead and do that. And yeah, Landry Jones, he wouldn't be able to do that. So maybe at that point, if you have a good veteran, you could throw that out. But I don't know. A complete different system I think you would need for Kaepernick. Because like I said, he's not that accurate. The Ravens don't have the big receivers that are going to be able to break open. They are always with more possession receivers or like over the middle body tight ends. So I don't know. But let's get off the NFC North or the AFC North. We'll be back there next week. Let's go ahead and kick it to our AFC-NFC East predictions. Excuse me. So I'm bringing up our graphic. These are averages. I was going to put it on the graphic. I forgot. I did not. So that's a mistake on my end. But we pulled a bunch of people, brought in average wins. So these might not add up if you put together our total picture, which I'll do at the end because we're going to do AFC East and NFC East together. Then we're going to do the North, we're going to do the North next week, then the South, and then the West. I didn't stick with it's a random order I picked. I don't know why. And then the following week, right before the season starts, we're going to go all together and do our playoff predictions. But reading this off for the audio-only podcast people, we have New England Patriots in the AFC East winning with 13 wins, Miami Dolphins with 8 wins, the Buffalo Bills 5 wins, and the New York Jets with 3. That's your AFC East. I'll read through it again. Patriots with 13 wins, Dolphins 8, Bills 5, and Jets 3. Now to the NFC East, a lot tighter. We have the Cowboys at 10, Giants at 9, Eagles at 8, and Redskins at 7. And again, I'll read through that one more time for the audio guys. That's Cowboys at 10, Giants at 9, Eagles at 8, and Redskins at 7. Now, last week, I'll just kick this off and I'll let you guys talk. USA Today had the Patriots going undefeated. Like I said, we had the Patriots all over the board. I think 12 was the lowest. 14 or 15 was the highest, so I'd have to look at the numbers. But no one had them going undefeated. Like I said, I feel like the USA Today poll had to be just one guy picking because not everyone in their office was picking an undefeated Patriots. We've been pretty consistent with this division. Looking through our picks when I put these together, I think most people had the order the same. The wins varied, especially for the Dolphins. Some people had double-digit wins for the Dolphins, down to the low 5 or 6 range. The Bills were pretty consistent, around 3 and 5. The Jets were pretty much in the bottom. So we'll start with the AFC East, guys. Go ahead, Rick. You can kick this one off. Who did you pick and why?
I picked the Patriots. I see it's their division to lose. They got all the talent. They won the Super Bowl last year. Consistent playoff team. Pretty much have a good amount, the same as that coaching staff coming back as well. Brady there, again, like I said, the whole entire season. I just see this as being their division to lose. And pretty much they're in the way I would say is also it's their schedule to control as well. I don't see the 16 victories happening like the USA Today poll. I picked them at 14, and I think that's right around that 13, 14, and I think it's very consistent there. So I think that's going to be one thing. I had it in the same exact order as well. I only gave the Bills one more win, but I think that's going to be the order, and I think it's going to be tough even for a team like the Dolphins to sneak in, be one of those last playoff teams in, just because you have to play the Patriots twice, and I would say they may sweep the division. They may go 6-0 easily in this division, and it's not going to be the Ryan brothers giving problems to the Patriots like they always do consistently since they're not in there anymore. So as coaches, but I agree with that a lot. I just see those teams as being on the top tier Patriots, and it's like everybody else. So
Matt, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
I kind of looked at it the same way. I don't see, it wasn't just USA Today. I'd seen, I want to say it was Fox, had talked a little bit about the Patriots going undefeated. There was one other credible news source that I thought, you're really going to bring up the potential undefeated season. I think when the 72 Dolphins did it, the schedule was less. There was less involvement with scouting and social media and things that I think, as far as the picking up of tendencies, it's almost impossible for teams to do that now. Yeah, I think New England definitely did a tremendous job in the offseason picking up wide receivers, picking up cornerbacks, picking pieces to already boost a Super Bowl championship caliber team. The team that really stands out to me in the division that is the true wild card is Miami, because they were playing well and then Tannehill got hurt last year. And I think if they can keep their pieces healthy, have a consistent running game, they have a Jahi that really went off last year and was able to score some points and gash Pittsburgh pretty badly in the regular season. Can you keep all those pieces together, keep them healthy? Miami could be a double-digit win team, and maybe push New England for the division championship. But a lot of that's going to hinge on, can they stay healthy? And in years past, they haven't been able to do that. Different people have gotten hurt, and it's kind of left them out to dry. When you look at the Jets, their quarterback situation is so terrible right now that they may end up start pulling season ticket holders to quarterback, because it's a dumpster fire. And until they get that solidified, they're really not going to be competitive in that division.
The Jets, they could call Tim Tebow up. He's already in New York. Well, maybe not. He's with the Mets, but he's not called up all the way yet, which could happen. He hit a couple home runs. He's been on a fire. I think he has more home runs than Michael Jordan. Rick, you might have to get that stat for me. Yep. Confirmed, because I'm not too big on my stats. But, yeah, the Jets, definitely bottom feeders. I don't know what. Are they in a race with the 49ers to prove who's the worst franchise? The worst run franchise in the NFL? I don't know if that's what they're trying to do here. Bills, I kind of feel bad for the Bills. Growing up, watching them lose all those Super Bowls, knowing hey, that's a team that loses every year. Because as a kid, you don't know the difference between the Super Bowl and the regular season. You just remember that one game that everyone picks in elementary school, and it just happened to be the Bills losing every year. But they'll get their stuff together eventually. Again, until the Patriots get rid of Tom Brady, they're going to be the class of the division. I think even if one of them went, Belichick or Tom Brady, another team might have a chance. The Dolphins' chance is going to be, are they going to make the wild card? I think they have a good chance. I actually have them as one of my final teams. I didn't make my actual pick yet as I'm looking at my bracket here. But I think they could. They've been making a push. Tannehill, we didn't mention him for fantasy quarterbacks. He would be a good one to have for cheap. I made a pretty good run with him. I didn't go all the way when I had him. But I was able to make playoffs and use him. He was pretty reliable. But again, he got to stay healthy. Staying healthy is a big key. So whenever you're looking at these teams and you're making predictions, are you going to have a healthy quarterback for a playoff run? I don't know. Let's kick over to the NFC East. Now, because we seem to be pretty solid on the AFC East with the Patriots winning and Miami vying for a potential wild card spot. In the NFC East, we had everything predicted. I'm pretty sure we had most of the teams, at least one or two, in the division. The Cowboys barely squeaking it out on number one. I have them as my clear number one in the East. I have them definitely getting double-digit wins. I don't think they're going to be hit with the sophomore slump. It's not like they're relying too much on passing. Their big thing is if Zeke can stay out of trouble and limit hits on Dak Prescott. If he stays healthy, Cowboys should be able to run through this division and make a good run in the playoffs. But I'll let you guys give your thoughts first on this division. Go ahead, Matt. You can kick it off this time.
Looking at the NFC East, the one team that I think is finally ready to step up and play big boy football is the Eagles. I think they finally have the consistent quarterback playing Carson Wentz. They went out and they got Alshon Jeffrey. They gave him some weapons to utilize. I think he was a pretty good game manager last year. I think if he can continue to build on what he has, I think they could be a possible double-digit winning team and push the Cowboys for that conference title. Or division title. I don't know if the Giants have enough to really make that push. To me, I see them as flash in the pan. They're kind of, because of how out of control Odell Beckham was last year, I think his antics weighed on the team, and it seemed like as he was going through his slump, so the offense went. And it was like when he wasn't, hauling in all the spectacular catches, the offense really struggled and had a hard time moving the football. So I really don't know how the Giants are going to fare being able to compete when you have teams like Dallas that can put up points and Philadelphia that took the steps to try to boost it. The other one that kind of is a big question mark is Washington. They made the wild card last year, I believe, and I tip my cap to the owner Snyder for trying to buy the pieces that he thinks he needs. He's like the anti-nutting. He just goes out and just spends ridiculous money on whoever he wants. It's like he's literally playing grown-up Madden. It's like whoever the top free agent is like, oh yeah, I'll buy him. Good. And hoping that he can fit that into his team. And they just haven't been able to really make the chemistry click. If they can figure out some way to make everything gel, I think they could be a possible team. But having crazy quarterback and Kirk Cousins like run around screaming at reporters, I think they're almost in that same bipolar situation as the Giants. That are you getting a good consistent week, or are you getting the manic side and having inconsistent play?
Yeah, and one reason why I like the Giants a little bit in that second place in the division is because I like the signing of Brandon Marshall. I really like that one because I think he gives them a second option, and he gives somebody that's going to pretty much hold people accountable. And I think he's kind of like going to be like a father figure to almost Odell Beckham and kind of set a standard for him. So I think that's one thing I like about the Giants being, the second place team in the division. And I agree with Matt. I don't see the sophomore slump out of the Cowboys. I think they have too many weapons, and I think that what helps them out is I think a guy like Jason Witten, who's always been consistent, always a good player, a guy who you can't find a bad word about him. and he's always going to be that consummate pro and could eventually end up being a Hall of Famer here eventually. So I think that's one thing. And I think their offensive line is one of the best offensive lines in football, the Dallas Cowboys. I think they protect so well for Dak Prescott. And I think that's one reason why he succeeded was because that offensive line was so good during that year for him.
Yeah, and that made me think, is Tony Romo, he's retired, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
If I was the Ravens, that's who I would call right now. He's not that removed from football, and I think he would fit better in with the Ravens offense because that's similar to the offense the Cowboys had when he was there with big tight end, try to just like they weren't really run heavy, they weren't really pass heavy, but he is a veteran. I would definitely take him over Kaepernick, but just look at what Dak Prescott did once he added that second option. Like once he was able to run, really helped the Cowboys' offensive line gel and open holes, and I just don't think that's going to stop. Now the Giants, I had them as my number 2 in this division, and I think, like Rick said, I really like the Brandon Marshall pickup, and I think Odell, he went through his thing. It's one of those sleeper years, like where the Giants could be the wild card and they could make a run in the playoffs. And I mean, wow, like, could you imagine if they matched up against the Patriots in another Super Bowl? Like, it would be crazy if Tom Brady didn't beat them. Like, it would almost hurt his legacy would have to be somewhat tarnished by Eli Manning. And this just seems like one of those years where it's like everyone kind of agrees they're probably going to be pretty decent. They probably will make the playoffs, but it's not like they're the world beater Giants. And it seems like every year that they have one of these where they're not lulling you to sleep, where you're thinking other teams like the Eagles should make a jump. Yeah, they should make a jump. And then the Giants just stiff arm them away. And then they're just prove in the playoffs, like, Cowboys, get back to your place. Like, we're the only successful NFC East team these days. And they make their run. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. I mean, Eli Manning, he has some tricks up his sleeve. But the Redskins, I actually had them. I think I had both them and the Eagles at 8 wins. I don't know how much this division's going to beat each other up, to be honest. I mean, I just don't think favorably compared to the rest of the NFC, no one has like a strong middle class like this. Usually it's like 1 or 2 teams as I'm looking around, like, the Falcons are going to be the class. Some of those other ones might beat each other up, where like it kind of reminds me of the NFC South. Was it last year or 2 years ago where everyone was kind of in the middle and they didn't have that head class? That's kind of what this division looks like to me. Everyone could be fighting for a spot. Could the Cowboys not make the playoffs? Yeah, I could see it happening. I just don't think, it's going to be close. Any way you look at it, look how we have it. 1 win separating each team. Is that going to happen? Probably not. But that's enough separation that, like, it's very hard to get an average to work out like that, I would think. So, I don't know, NFC East, if I'm a gambling man, I'm staying the hell away from that division. AFC East circling back around, definitely taking that Patriots, and I'm sure Vegas has them minus 500 on division champs because they know, too, that everyone's going to be picking them to win. But the NFC East, that's brutal. And I feel for Cowboy fans because, like, in the 90s growing up, they were like the Steelers' rival. I know we lost to them in that Super Bowl, the Neil O'Donnell Super Bowl, the worst. And then the Cowboys have kind of fallen off the map. Steelers have been able to keep it going, and there's really no NFC team that has had a run, really, from a dynasty perspective. Seahawks kind of tried. The Giants have 2 Super Bowls, but most of the teams have been from the AFC with, like, the Patriots just dominating. So, just some thoughts as I'm looking through this as we're closing up on the NFL. Do you guys have any final thoughts on the NFL, either on fantasy quarterbacks or on the AFC-NFC East?
Yeah, as far as the quarterback situation goes, I think as long as you can find yourself a guy that is going to have an opportunity to get some points or to have some games, you don't want to have one of those guys that are going to be a run-focused team that they're not going to get opportunities. Being able to see, and that we're living in a great time right now where there's so much media out there that you can get an inside look at a lot of how teams are practicing and preparing. And I think if you use the preseason to your advantage, you can really find who are going to be some players that are going to burst out, because those are the guys that are going to show during the preseason that they can handle the regular season load and will definitely be on display.
And I would say for the quarterbacks on the fantasy side, I would say you still have to have a backup quarterback out there. You have to have somebody that's a quality backup quarterback. I don't know how you define quality, but somebody that's going to start every day and somebody that's going to be there. Because if you have Drew Brees, he's one injury away. Just like any other quarterback, they're one hit away from an injury. They could be out for a season. You got to have somebody that can step up in that spot too.
And don't rely on that team's backup. I know a lot of people do that. That's just some solid advice. Like, if Drew Brees gets hurt, I'll just pick up whoever his backup's going to be. Like, that normally never, ever works out. Never. So don't rely on that. That's crazy. You might as well just kill your team. You might as well not pick up anyone. Because, you're just going to hurt yourself. Like Matt said, you don't want to be stuck with an awful Landry Jones. But going to make our transition now. Back. Going to talk Major League Baseball trade deadline. Just going to touch on it. We've been talking pretty Major League Baseball heavy the past couple weeks, and the deadline has passed. Was it yesterday at 4 p.m.? I think it was yesterday. Pirates, like I said, I heard that they weren't going to trade McCutchen or Harrison, and they held true. They didn't trade any of their big guys. They traded away Tony Watson for basically nobody. And didn't they make another deal too, Rick?
Yes, Joaquin Benoit from Phillies.
Yeah. So they tried to replace Watkins as he went away, or Watson. So they tried to backfill him, the guy from the Phillies. It definitely doesn't help the playoff push. Pirates have been playing awful on the road. They're back, 5.5 games now? I'm pretty sure they're done. I didn't put the flag at half-mast yet, but it's going to be coming soon. McCutchen's been playing awesome. He had a few multi-homer games, I think, on that road trip, or at least one multi-homer game. It seemed like every game I watched, the Pirates were losing 8-2, and the 2 runs were due to a McCutchen home run. So, some other big news. I saw the Red Sox, was it their owner or their GM? They were complaining that the Yankees have turned into the Golden State Warriors, and they're just paying for every top player and trading for every top player. But I don't know what he's been complaining about, because they've been doing that for 20 years. And it barely works out for them. They've always had one of the top payrolls, and they only have, 2 World Series? I think maybe they have 3. But the Marlins have 2, for Christ's sake. So it's not like baseball doesn't pay off like it does in basketball, where you only have to pay for 5 guys. Baseball is a whole different beast, because you need the pitchers to stay healthy. But go ahead, Rick. What were your thoughts on the trade deadline?
Not surprised with the Pirates at all. Not surprised with the Watson deal. He's a Scott Boras client. As Pirates have done before, they don't talk to Scott Boras, so they try to get him to stay away. He did switch agents, so that's exactly why he got traded. And I think other teams knew Watson was going to be gone, and I think they were trying to bid very, very low for him. And the Dodgers got lucky. They bid two single A ball players for him, and they got him. So, I mean, it's different to see that 2 left-handers went both to the Dodgers, Tony Watson and Tony Cingrani of the Reds, and Scott Van Slyke, who could be a major leaguer on most rosters, went to Cincinnati. And we get 2 guys that are single A ball players with Pittsburgh. So that was tough to say. Wasn't surprised at all McCutchen or Harrison or and Garrett Cole stayed. They still have years, and the Pirates need to sell tickets. Something that was reported, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, reported that the Pirates are down 4,000 tickets a game. That was a report about 2 weeks out. 2 weeks ago, was 4,000 tickets are down per game. So it shows the Pirate fans aren't coming out, and especially when you lose 4 out of 6 games to the Padres, and Giants, and you're probably going to lose this one tonight. At one point, it was 8-1, and it is a loss, so it is in the book. So you lost one to the Reds. So I said August 1 was going to be the deciding date for the Pirates. Are we going to talk about Pirates in Pittsburgh, or are we going to talk about Steelers training camp? I think we're talking about Steelers training camp right now. So I think this is kind of a done deal. And I think that's, even how this show began, we start talking about football. We're not talking about baseball. But I would say the overall winner of the trade deadline was the Dodgers. They got Yu Darvish and 2 left-handed pitchers. I think they needed it. They are doing, I would say if the Red Sox want to complain about a team buying the trade deadline, I wouldn't complain about the Yankees. I would complain about the Dodgers because they just got 3 guys for practically very little out of their top 10 prospects. I think the Dodgers only lost, I think, their 4th overall prospect in that trade. They only lost 1 out of their top 10. It was number 4, Willie Calhoun, to the Rangers. So I give kudos to the Dodgers. They want to go buy it. They got the big media money, so with their television deal. So see what they do. So I would definitely say the Pirates are losers and the Padres are losers. Here's a team that could have dumped 2 or 3 players, decide to sit there and do nothing. I mean, do the White Sox, dismantle your team. So try to build for the future in 2020. I don't understand the Padres either. So
yeah, Dodgers are definitely loading up. I did see a bunch of people complaining about the White Sox, comparing it to trying to make crazy trades. What I guess there was their GM with the Tigers before. He compared it to that. A lot of people complaining that it's not going to work out for the White Sox, but kind of have to wait and see. Dodgers are definitely playing win now, and yeah, for what the Steelers or the Pirates traded, basically nothing. Matt, I know. Do you have anything for Major League Baseball?
This was one of those years where I think there really wasn't a lot of splash players. The Marlins had said about their outfielders they weren't looking to shop. There was talks with trying to move Stanton or whatever. They ended up not being able to move any of those guys around. I wasn't really as surprised with the Pirates and Cardinals not moving people in the division because they really haven't been playing all that consistently to begin with. I think with Pittsburgh, it really cemented them not making a move after getting as hot as they were, trying to keep the team intact, and I think also trying to save the fan base a little bit from going into a complete revolt. I think had they have had this losing streak a couple weeks ago, you would have seen a couple people maybe even catch on the block and being shipped out to try to get at least something for some of these guys. Now that they're back to losing and not playing well, it definitely hurts the team, and you would want to see them being more competitive, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I want to touch on what Rick said about the Pirates being down sold tickets. I saw a bunch of people were writing articles about the trade deadline and how brutal it's been for the Pirates over the past couple of years. And the one big thing I saw, I don't know if it was from the Wall Street Journal as well, but it was from one of those money magazines where they had said that when the Steelers traded, I think it was Neil Walker to the Mets in 2013, they were doing it to cut salary, but they ended up losing more money than what they would have paid him due to all the season ticket losses and just falling out of the playoffs then, because they had made at least the wild card play in 2 or 3 years in a row. And after that deal, everything started to fall off. I mean, it was around that same time. I think that was the year. Maybe it was a different year that deal was made. But you can't keep trading fan favorites. And now you're at a point where, you can hold pat, or stand pat, but whenever they were on that West Coast trip, they were playing 2 of the worst teams in the NL West. 2 of the worst in the entire NL. And they only snuck out 2 or 3 wins. Lost both series. So, they had their chance. I see Rick brought it up, I think after the show last time we talked about it. The Pirates' schedule is weak. They don't play teams with a winning record in August till halfway through the month. But just because you're playing a weak schedule, you still have to win. So, I know what the ownership's trying to do. They're trying to say, maybe the Pirates will win a few games, pick some up here, get close enough to keep the fans interested, but I don't know. It felt like I was scared 2 weeks ago when everything was going good that they were going to trade. And once they started losing, now it's kind of just like more meh. At least the Steelers are going. And then, I don't know. I have no final thoughts. But we'll end it with that. You guys, do you have any final thoughts? Go ahead, Matt. We'll start with you.
Good luck to the people that are going to be starting their fantasy seasons here pretty soon. Hopefully the draft treats you well in whatever format you're at. And pick a good quarterback because it'll take you far.
Rick?
I want to just say congratulations to Southern Maryland Blue Crabs. They clinched the Atlantic League first half championship for the South Division. So they beat the Lancaster Barnstormers. So I think Atlantic League definitely will be a good league here to watch out for the rest of the year. But also just say with the trade deadline, I think you saw who wants to go win and who wants to play for next year. And I'll say it again. It's sad to watch, but I think people are already going to make their money value and money talk, and I think they're going to be talking about some other things in Pittsburgh besides Pittsburgh Pirate baseball here soon to come.
Yeah, Pirates are done. Final thoughts. Jeff, I think, finally launched Spaces or Laces. I think he recorded last week. He was supposed to put it up Thursday or Friday, but that paid education didn't pay off for him. He couldn't figure out how to work his computer, get that video uploaded to YouTube. He struggled quite a bit. I told him I was going to give him a little burn on the show today, but I think that finally launched for him. Took him 3 or 4 days. So hopefully that show is up. You get a little bit of extra content. I think he's building on some of the topics of what we talk about here on the show. It will definitely be included in the same iTunes feed. So if you subscribe to the Southbound Sports Show, we're throwing all our extra content on there. I'm going to be throwing up mini videos with a little bit more in-depth tips on fantasy sports, drafting, going through some of the players, even some of the other tips if you're not in an auction draft like we are. Some things just to look for and make sure that you're prepared. If you've never played fantasy before, don't go in blind because 3 weeks in, you'll hate it. So I'm going to try to get some extra content out there for the Southbound Sports Show as we go through. We'll be doing previews and stuff. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast. Getting some good download numbers. We like to see that grow. So tell some friends. Give us a rating on iTunes. And tune back in. We'll be back next week. So we do it live every Tuesday at 9, 8 Central. I think that's what the standard time thing is. And it will go up on YouTube if you miss it live, and on iTunes or regular anywhere you get a podcast on Wednesday, the following day. I'm trying to do those earlier in the day too. So keep an eye out there. But thanks for checking us out, and we will see you next week.